The Athletic had a big scoop on Monday. Sam Amick, the senior NBA writer, said sources the Lakers head coach Frank Vogel's job in serious jeopardy despite the Jazz win. They have a game tonight, which would lead me to believe is Frank Vogel's job still in jeopardy as they host the Pacers. Sam, good morning.
Good morning, Dan. Thanks for having me, sir.
So is his job in jeopardy?
It is, for sure. To me, the human element, Dan, is like always coming into play here. The emotions got really, really high after the Denver loss, which shouldn't shock anybody. Trailing by 45 at one point, losing by 37. Yes, you don't have Anthony Davis, but the Nuggets don't have Jamal Murray. They don't have Michael Porter Jr. So that was as close as Frank had come to losing his job. And, I saw your segment earlier and your 2 cents on why they wouldn't just fire him now. And you kind of got me to make sure I had the answer to that question ready for you. The truth is, I don't think they have the faith in the rest of the coaching staff. David Fizdale is a former head coach and the kind of guy who certainly has the chops to do it. But there is a sense that in the collective, in terms of the staff, they don't necessarily think that it would put them in a better spot. And to Frank's credit, I know it's just one game, but that Utah game was big because the mood was such that if those players wanted to say goodbye to him, then all they had to do was roll over. And they obviously didn't do that.
Yeah, but if they lose tonight at home to the Pacers, or, they
Right.
go on this road trip and they.
No, I hear you for sure. It is going to continue to be tenuous, but the Jazz game specifically, is like you have LeBron choosing in Denver to not address the media, which is very un-LeBron-like. And then he later explained that he didn't want to say things that he would regret, which kind of tells you how everybody was feeling, from the front office to the players to the owner. Everybody's upset. And then LeBron apologizes on Twitter, which is not the kind of thing he typically does. Obviously, you have Magic out there tweeting. So all those things thrown together made the Jazz win huge. But yeah, it's going to continue to be challenging. And we'll see where it goes.
Okay, if they had lost to Utah on Monday night, was he going to get fired?
I think it was a very, very strong possibility, depending on, it sounds funny, but the optics. Yes, wins and losses matter. If you lose by 2 and you play well and still send the message. I mean, all throughout that game, it's funny, a lot of the Lakers media corps and my colleague Bill Oram, who I obviously authored this story with, and others, were tweeting about how the scary part for the Lakers in that game is that they were playing really well, but then they would fall behind. And you would start in real time asking that question of, how do you separate playing well versus winning? And so I don't know for sure what would have happened after the Utah game, but it was extremely touch and go. And if they had been blown out, then I think Frank probably would have been out. But again, you have all these layers to it, right? You've got the fact that when Frank was in trouble before, and I'm talking earlier in the season, like we reported, Kurt Rambis, who's an advisor with the Lakers, had made it clear to that coaching staff that they were in a bad spot. Then Frank gets COVID. Then he's out for 5 games. To me, one of the interesting what-if scenarios is, David Fizdale ends up going 1-4 during that stretch. And so it's a small sample size, but as ownership in the front office looks at it and asks the question of, if not this guy, then what are we doing? That didn't paint a picture that it would be rosier on the other side. And I think that kind of stuff is coming into play too.
What is Frank Vogel not doing that is going to cost him his job? He didn't build the team.
Right. No, I'm with you. I mean, this is the tricky part. This. You've been doing it so long. The tricky part of being the messenger on these types of stories is we're certainly not endorsing the logic behind firing Frank. You know what I'm saying? We're relaying what's happening internally. But opinion-wise, I would 100% fall into your side. Frank is a high-level coach, a guy who, after winning a championship, I don't think deserved to have to wait as long as he did for an extension. That was curious, and I think, missing the mark on the Lakers' part. Then when he got the extension, as we reported at the time, they only gave him an additional year. So he's running through 2022, 2023. That was another sign that the ground beneath him wasn't all that stable. So we kind of knew this going in. And it then comes down to the old pro sports adage of how you can't fire the players. I just covered this in my backyard in Sacramento. Luke Walton gets fired. Certainly he had made mistakes. The Kings aren't any better for it. They promoted Alvin Gentry. But it's when the pressure reaches a point at these different organizations that you feel like just something has to be done. It's either the coaching change, or it's a big trade, or a GM loses his job. In this case, that's not what's going to happen right now. And trade deadline coming up quick. So maybe they can find a way to improve around the edges and relieve pressure elsewhere.